Welcome to the Gen AI podcast, where the future meets fun and tech talk trends. Get ready to dive into the world of artificial intelligence like never before. Your hosts, Dale, Alan, Greg, and Val, are about to take you on a wild ride through the AI universe. So, buckle up, tune in, and let the AI adventure begin.
Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to episode 4 on the Gen AI podcast. It's amazing to be with you and to chat to everyone about what's happening in the space. Once again, I'm joined by Alan and Greg. We are missing Mr. Val Matthews. He's MIA, so if anyone's seen him, please reach out to him and let him know that we're looking for him. Hope you're well, Val. We do miss you a little bit, but not too much.
Send us a postcard.
Exactly. Send the postcard from Hawaii or wherever you are. But a few stats for the listeners. This is only episode 4, so 3 episodes in. We have 25 subscribers on YouTube, which is awesome for 3 episodes. So please do help us share what we're doing here and sharing the love. So please do subscribe if you haven't done that yet. It helps us spread the word. And on LinkedIn, we're almost up to 250 LinkedIn followers. So please do help follow that page as well. Remember, we're doing this purely to share inside information. So we'll hopefully not agree with each other all the time and disagree, so you get perspective. We hopefully talk for all realms as well. So whether you're new to generative AI or data, all the way through to a bit more technical stuff. We'll try and cover it all. So we've got about 40 odd minutes to get to it all. But before we get into everything, Al, congratulations. While we're talking about generative AI, you and Greg have been creating human AI, or human eye, should I say, not artificial intelligence.
I just want to say for everyone, not together.
Yeah, I was going to say the same, not together.
Yeah, we did it separately.
couple of months apart.
Yeah, a couple of months apart, different people.
Yeah, but congratulations. How's it going?
Yeah, thank you. It's going quite well, actually. Second one is easier, apparently.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, spot on. So yeah, we'll see how that progresses. Perhaps we can get them both on, Greg and Al, when they can start saying a few words. But let's get into it, gents. I think we had a few ideas on what we want to chat about on this episode. As you say, we're unscripted, so we'll go all over the show. We also do like those that are listening live to chuck in some questions. So if you're on YouTube watching us, please do send in your questions. But I think let's start. Well, there were 2 things. I don't know where you gents want to start. I was potentially going down the whole geek avenue of hallucinations, what it actually means, perhaps both in terms of output and technically why it happens, how to spot it, and maybe how to get around it both technically and when you're looking at outputs. And then the other one was potentially going into the whole future space and going, when, how, imagine we're in the space where we're project professionals and we're constantly feeding in progress and updates on projects via live feed, whether it be by audio or video, and it's feeding the machine to continuously look at progress and update forecasts. And then maybe, every individual gets a daily prompt via voice or text saying this is what you need to do today to improve your productivity. So there's a whole bunch we can go over, and of course any listener questions we'll tackle as well. But Greg, where do you want to go? We'll give you the option.
No, let's do the future stuff first, and then go to the hallucination. Just because I find that stuff more fun. Because well, this will live in prosperity for many years, so we'll probably all be wrong, but people won't be able to prove us wrong for quite a long time.
So future stuff then, where do you want to start with it? I mean, if we painted that picture of utopia, perhaps, where you wake up and your device, whether it's Alexa or whatever, says, today this is what you have to do on the project.
I'll throw out an idea, and I'd love Alan to either tear this to pieces or, build on it or something. But this is something that I hypothesized about 5 years ago. I was like, the ultimate form of AI in project management will essentially be automated governance. So, I can imagine a time where I just walk into an office and I go, right, what do I need to do today? What are the problems? And, what meetings do I have? And actually, the AI is already organized a diary as well. It's like, okay, so there's 3 problems happening on the project. This equipment hasn't been delivered. This contract hasn't been signed, and this risk has emerged. All 3 are important enough for you to put your eye to. I've booked meetings at 10, 12, and 3 with the people so you can sort it out. This is the most wanted action of the meeting. This is the agenda. This is what you need to do. And it can almost be that straightforward. Now, what that does imply is that the day-to-day processing and iteration of the project is actually being run by a machine, not a person, or not a group of people. So I don't know if you're going towards more of a Skynet computer in control version there, but I can see that being a future, and one of the reasons why is we do that with Google Maps nowadays. We want to go there, tell me how to get there, and none of us massively go, I completely disagree with this route that Google Maps has shown me. I'm going to drive west instead of east. We do have thoughts, but generally people just follow it, don't they?
I'm actually very happy that you use that analogy. So I have 2 thoughts on this. One is, ever since, I want to say, the 50s or the 60s, when we started thinking about automated computation, there's been this desire, hallucination, planetary hallucination, that we would work less because computers are going to help us, and we would make more smart decisions because computers are going to help us. And the result of it actually is that humans love creating work for themselves. So the invention of faster communication has just meant that we send more and more emails every day, which become more and more pointless and futile and are just boilerplate filler that is just filling up the internet, right? And I think that first is going to happen. So it doesn't matter how much smart you put, we're going to create more work for ourselves. And it's going to be additional to whatever we already do. And on top of that, I think there's a lot of people who, in the Google Maps analogy, are going to be the ones that are like, oh, I don't think this is right. And they pull up a paper map and start drawing with a pencil on it, which is actually what my dad used to do when I put him in front of a sat nav. Now he uses a TomTom from 2005 and refuses to use Google Maps because, like, oh, I don't trust the phone. The TomTom has all the maps. And I'm like, yeah, they're from 2005. And that is going to be the second obstacle to a lot of this happening. Now, I am very skeptical about cultural change. I don't think it's going to be easy or feasible to change mindsets and cultures. So really what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to work around that in one of 2 ways. Either decisions happen completely outside of the human path. So there'll be a lot of things. You'll get a report in the morning. It's like, oh, you had this problem, and I solved these in this way. And then you escalate the things that shouldn't be done by automation. Or you make it so that the humans make every decision. So at least if the humans are creating work for themselves, it's at least work that's not on the critical path of the project, but on the critical path of what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Can we get your dad on the pod to ask him what would make him adopt newer tech, perhaps? Because he might represent a generation that have a barrier to looking at new tech that we are potentially struggling with in the project environment.
My dad doesn't know what a podcast is and will not be interested in it, but I can ask.
Maybe you can ask him, actually.
And his son is one of the leading technologists in the world.
That'll be great. Or maybe you can just ask him, just say, hey, what would it take for you to use Google Maps, perhaps, instead of your TomTom? But the interesting one is, I also like that analogy, Greg, because what did Google do to allow people to trust their maps?
Well, I think if you zoom in on Google as a specific example, you kind of miss what actually happened. You kind of have to zoom out and think, we had paper maps, and then it went to the TomToms. I remember my mum buying her first TomTom in 2000 or 95 or something like that. And if you think about it, TomTom at that point was just a paper map that could help you plan some routes, and you could change the routes. What Google did is they did two things. They brought it to mobile devices, so you didn't have to buy a £500 TomTom. It was an app that you got on your £500 phone, so it crashed the barrier to access. And the second thing is, because of 3G connection, they added live road data. So and now in my car, because it's one of those Teslas with the central screen, it's Google Maps, so I can see where there's traffic on the road in live time. Now, is that accurate? Is it not? Doesn't really matter, because here's the thing: it's not a mission critical. It's generally not a mission critical capability, and I think that's how did Google get us to adopt? Well, they took a technology that people were already adopting just so it was useful and not mission critical, and then they made it more accessible by making it cheaper, and then they gave extra information with new tech, which is live road data. If it was critical, i.e., okay, would I use Google Maps to plan a route in an ambulance whereby if I didn't get there on time, my wife would die, and I had preparation time? That's a very different scenario than I'm going to visit my brother.
Absolutely, yes. Do you trust yourself to plan better than Google Maps? I don't.
Well, this is the thing. Well, a lot of people might reconsider that. I don't think so. I think you just I wouldn't trust. I'd be like, I'm going to use Google. To be honest, I'm phoning an ambulance. I'm like, I want the blue lights. That's going to get me there faster than anything else. Yes,
true.
Because people move out of the way.
Well, but sometimes the ambulances are going to be 45 minutes away, right? So they'll tell you drive to the hospital if you can.
Exactly. Well, I think that's the answer to the question. I think really that this mission criticality underlines everything. It's like, how does a technology become insidious in the way you do things? My experience is one step at a time. It does a little bit that's a bit fun, and then it does a little bit more that's useful, and then it does a little bit more that's starting to really be a part, and then it does a little bit more, and before you know it, it is how you do things. Do you think the people today who grew up with phones, do you think that they could go and get a paper map and plan a route? Do you remember at the bottom of the pages where it's like page 47 now, and you have to...
Yeah, I think I've got a London A to Z somewhere that I inherited. I know exactly what you're talking about. No, and in fact, one of the things that Google Maps did is it allowed everyone to just basically be a little bit dumber, in the sense that you didn't have to think about your route anymore when you got out and in your car, right? Sort of also true of navigation, but I feel like if you, back in the day when we had TomToms in our cars, it was a little bit more thought out and planned up front anyway. But unless it's a route that you do every day, you still put the map on. I do this, my wife does that. Where am I going? Oh, I'm going to the local DIY shop, which maybe I go once every 2 months. I know exactly where it is, but I'll put the map on.
Because it also tells you traffic, and it's a habit.
Yeah,
it's a habit that you get into,
and it allows you to save brain energy. Right? It's not quite being dumber, but you're saving brain energy for something else.
Well, I was going to say actually, there's the gain, obviously. What is the loss? So if we translate that into the project world, where we're automating, let's say, a plan of how to deliver a project, that's effectively the Google Maps analogy, right? Here's the map. This is what you got to do. If we did that in project delivery, what do we lose? Do we lose anything? What's the cost? Because generally there's a cost to some cost benefit.
I'm going to say something quite controversial here. It doesn't really matter, because what Alan said is true. So the world works with the invisible hand of the market, not just financial markets, but also people's effort. And humans are genetically designed to expend as little energy as possible if they can. That's the source of laziness, is not expending energy, because energy was hard to come by in nature. Brain energy is some of the most costly energy. Your brain takes something like 30 or 40% of the energy that your body creates. So across an entire batch of humans, the people will naturally focus on behaviors that have perceived lower energy. So whether or not pros or cons, for example, I'll give you an example. Tinder. I don't have to approach people anymore. I just have to swipe and send some texts. You might
Does
go,
your wife know?
well, what is the cons of, not being able to interact with humans? Irrelevant. Yeah. That's the way people do it now. It's the same with, I'd say the same with projects. I'd be like, there'll be a lot of the more mature generation that are heading out to pasture very soon going, but you'll lose this experience and that experience and that. Yeah. Also
you don't lose it, right? Like even with Google Maps and the ubiquity of navigation, you haven't lost the skill as humankind in terms of planning a route. It's just been encoded, and the number of people that have to think about that skill are now limited to a small product team within an organization, and maybe a couple of their competitors, right? Yep. But also, you take that skill and you've made it systematic and continuously improved and permanent, versus something that is handed over generation by generation over the campfire on Thursday nights.
Actually, you hit the nail on the head there, because I was thinking here about, I hear people sometimes go, well, who now can make a fire? And I'm like, well, the people who in the military who have to live outside, and boiler repair people. Why? Because we've automated making fire. People don't need to know generally how to make fire, because we have lighters and boilers. And then we have repair people to keep them running. So it's like, okay, well, the time I'm taking to make a fire can be better used to do other more important / enjoyable things. So you're right.
This is fair.
Ironically, you have more time and you might light the barbecue, but so you still need to know how to make a fire in that case. But yes.
That's for enjoyment, not for survival.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the other thing what I was thinking is, in terms of using less brain power, I think, is it the Barack Obamas of the world, the Steve Jobses, they have this thing where you make so many decisions throughout the day. So if you just wear the same thing, that's one less decision to make. And I think that's kind of where we're heading to with this conversation, is that if we can use technology to spend more time on the things we enjoy doing, then surely that's better for not just in general, but project delivery. Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, and this is Mark Zuckerberg's thing, right? Where he always wears the same bloody hoodie, and I don't know if there's scenes from the Pink Panther where the Pink Panther opens the wardrobe and it's just pink outfits, right? And that must be what his wardrobe's like. Plus one suit for when he gets called into Congress for something naughty. And I mean, I get it, right? He's automating away, and there's this notion of the decision budget, right? You only have a certain amount of energy to make decisions on any given day, and so you should use it on decisions that matter. Which is why, for example, usually people drink the same coffee every morning, right? It's not like, oh, this morning I feel like a vanilla latte, tomorrow I'm going to have a black Americano with 2 sugars, and next day I'm going to have a tea. Even though you could very well do that, but people automatically conserve their energy for that. I do think, though, that might be taking it too far. Deciding what you're going to wear on a day might actually be something that brings you joy, right? And so automating yourself away for the purpose of being more efficient in the decisions that you make on your job by taking away joy in your life is a very quick way to depression, I think. Right. So I think that specific one is a bad decision, or like a bad choice to make. But, you know, if instead of having to open my emails every morning and read through 100 emails and scroll through and like, oh, I'm going to delete these 95 emails, I'm going to read these 5, I'm going to respond to 2, that was done for me automatically, that I can live with.
Yeah. Can you wear your is it did we settle? Is it gold or beige shiny jacket that you've got on the next episode? That would be amazing.
If you've got a gold shiny jacket, that's awesome.
It's not gold. It's not. I don't know why I keep saying this. It's not gold. It's cream with some shininess.
It shines. That's the main feature. It shines. The color's up for debate, but it's awesome, Greg.
I'm looking forward to seeing this.
That jacket only comes out when we're nominated for an award. So give me an award and I'll wear it.
Okay, we'll come
Best
with
podcast.
an award. Yeah, well, no, we'll come for an individual award for him for the next episode, Greg.
Best jacket on the podcast. There we go. We've got the award.
Yes.
But cool. Like, just taking Alan's point there, because he's right. Like, for me, there are a number of steps that people need to go through in their mind. The number one step is elements of understanding. So, like, what are we talking about here? Like, what the hell is a Bitcoin? Or what is an AI? Or what is a car? And then the next is a process of inevitability. So, you know, people are interested. A very small section of people are excited. Most people are just kind of laissez-faire until it becomes an inevitable trend. If we zoom all the way out, there was a speech last night that I thought was amazing, or yesterday, by the Argentinian president at Davos, where he was talking about, it's great. I posted it on LinkedIn. Like, it's 20 minutes long, and it's a masterclass in how economics works. But long story short, it was the per capita GDP of the Western world has just skyrocketed since 1800s. It's literally on an exponential parabola, and it's got to the point now where if you smooth it out for recessions and terrible government decisions, in general, we have the capacity to double the wealth of each person every 23 years. It's just that it's being drained away with shit, holes in the bucket, basically, with government policies and different this kind of thing. But you've got to think about, well, how has that actually happened? Like, how has that happened? Well, it actually started like properly increasing when the Industrial Revolution happened, which was a bunch of machines that automated muscles. So rather than a bunch of people sitting around knitting all day, you had spinning jennies that could go back and forth. And don't get me wrong, there were bad things. Children were sent to man them and they lost their arms. Okay, well, that's a very bad thing, but the progression. Then it was like the steam engines and the train lines. So suddenly you could transport large distances and much more easily across oceans. Then it went into industrial manufacturing. So you had the production lines with like Henry Ford and then one modern Toyota. Then you had the digital revolution, which was computers and the internet. And now you're having the communications revolution, which I would argue started properly with mobile phones and social media, and actually AI probably is the back end of this, going into the production revolution. So, the fact that you have machines that can design machines that can do stuff, the only difference in my mind is that they're doing mental activities as opposed to physical activities. So just imagine in the real world, if a spinning jenny could design a machine that produced spinning jennies, it'd be like, wait, what? I've got unlimited production here, and I don't have to get involved. It's this progression, and the way I'd see this is the inevitability argument for me is the fact that this is fundamentally required to keep the march of increasing productivity per capita, so the increasing GDP per capita, which is the driving force of every economic market in the world. Now, if you kind of take that and go, okay, you look at projects, people say, well, what is the right use case? Where do we start, etc. That's a question below. The fundamental question is, in my view, it's just totally inevitable. It is 100% inevitable. So people can, there can be people who go, I'm still using maps with pencil. Cool. That is going to be the niche of the niche of the niche, and you better have some unbelievably valuable skills that people either don't need at scale or they can't automate in some way.
It brings you enjoyment.
Dale, what's our policy on actually on this podcast?
Go for
Do
it.
We have one?
Correct me. This is like.
So yeah. I agree with I like the sentiment. Let me put that out there first. I like the sentiment, but there is one, I think, fundamental point about economics here, which is what you just described as inflation. 3% growth every year, or 3% growth doubles every 23 years. Yep. And I just checked it because I thought it was 2%, but 2% is 1.6. 3% gives you double every 23 years. Usually people look at the magic number of 7% because that's when it doubles every 10 years, right? As economic growth or investment growth a lot of the time. But, if you think about exponentials, 1.07 is the magic one that gives you doubling every 10 years. And I mean, in a sense, economic growth is what drives inflation, right? Those two numbers are basically the same thing. And I know we're really diverging from AI and projects, but
it's half because you can have it depends on the kind of inflation. I would say that the cost of creating and buying a modern car today is a million times less than it would be 100 years ago, because you couldn't physically do it. It'd be like a massive undertaking. What I'd say is, yes, inflation goes up, but you also have massive increase in quality and accessibility of goods. So the cost of
that comes from things that are not doubling everybody's wealth, right? That comes from technological innovation and sharing of innovation, which is somewhat correlated with economic growth and inflation, but not completely, right? There are economies that have been deflationary for as long as I've been alive, pretty much, like Japan, which have actually been on the forefront of many technological innovations and do a lot of things very, very well, and have shared those innovations with the rest of the world, right?
Yeah, here's a different spin on this topic, I think. If you accept that a lot of populations have a lot of countries have an aging population, mostly driven by the baby boomers, and the fact that we won't necessarily be able to be self-sustainable because there are fewer people to look after those that will be older. And so you do need technology for that aspect. Otherwise, countries the global system will fall apart. Because if you think about it, if you're a state or a country and you need to look after your own first and foremost, you're not going to start exporting your goods anymore, right? And I know we're going totally off piste here. And so all of a sudden, those countries that only have imports will literally starve, right? So that's a different problem rather than, I guess, financial. And this is where I think AI...
It's a little bit more complex. Yeah. It's a little bit more complex than that, because you can have different tiers of goods and services. But the sentiment is correct. The fundamental thing is, if you don't have the productivity to take care of your debts, basically, saying old people, it's a debt of society. So, the younger people have to pay the debt of the old. If you don't have the productivity to pay that debt, then you're going to suffer. So what you're basically saying, and it might not be technology, you just need systems that enable, for example, one person to take care of 5. Like systems like that obviously don't fall down. And you're at the, and to Alan's point before, he's absolutely right. Like once certain technologies get to a certain level of purveyance in society, they become accessible for enjoyment. So I'm not discounting enjoyment here. Enjoyment's a very big part of this. For example, PlayStations. Like computers were built for doing computations in wars, and then now I'm playing Minecraft and The Sims and that kind of stuff. It's just a bit of fun. But kind of bringing this full circle back to projects, people might go, well, how does this all apply in the world of projects? What I'd say is the world is a very, very complex place, and it runs using mechanisms that are described by free markets, which are very, very difficult to understand and predict. And rational arguments like, oh, we can't use this technology for that because of these reasons, might not fly because of how the markets work. So, for example, just imagine that you're going, okay, well, we're not going to use AI in this project because of very valid reasons. And then someone just goes, well, I am, and I'll bid 20% less than you. Does the client really care? They've got it on contract, etc. So it's like, oh, but I was right. Yeah, you might have been right, but you're also out of work. So what I'm saying is it's going to be, navigating it is going to be an act of discovery as opposed to a planned progression, and discovery is a market mechanism.
I think you're right. It's not a concise plan on how this evolves, but I love the fact that we've gone totally off piste. Here, because it's great.
I love the fact that
folks.
Alan brought up inflation. I was like,
I mean,
man, he knows a lot.
Yeah, he's a smart guy. Yeah, as if he's not on this podcast. Let's shift gears a little bit. There you have it, folks. We've just told you about the world economics and how it all works, and it's great. Every day is a school day. Let's shift gears to hallucination because we do want to spend a bit of time on that. We promised that at the top of the pod that we talk about it. Mm-hmm. We may get a little bit geeky here, or Greg and Al might. I'll just be schooled. So, in general terms, Al, what is the definition of hallucination when it comes to generative AI?
It's whatever you want it to be. So I say this tongue in cheek, but what is the difference between a model that generates something that you like or a hallucination is that you read what it's generated and you don't agree with it. Because what transformers do, their entire job is to create a sequence that isn't recorded anywhere by using probabilities. Right? A more complex version of that, but you can boil it down to that, which means that they're always creating something new. So really, then, the conversation should be about, is the thing that's been generated something that matches my own world model versus the world model of the model? And I think it was Greg Brockman actually has, or maybe it might be Ilya Sutskever, but one of those two, has a working theory of the fact that LLMs now have internal world models. So they have basically a set of beliefs, right, which is represented by weights and probabilities. It's not like those things have changed. But then a hallucination, if you think about it that way, is a mismatch between world models, right? So if an LLM tells you that Abe Lincoln was born in 1955, we call that hallucination. But I think the term is a little bit dismissive of the fact that, the world model that was created inside the model is not one that matches reality, which, sure, like, if you think about neurodegenerative issues, then you do talk about hallucinations in those cases, right? But a hallucination is a misinterpretation of the input that you're receiving, whereas what's happening here is like more of a delusion.
Right.
And so these delusions can be overcome with, in a sense, like the same ways that you overcome delusions in psychiatry, which is with grounding, right? And grounding can happen in two ways on a model. Either you fine tune it on stuff that that the model doesn't know about or has the wrong world model about. Sorry for the repetition there. Or you give it the information that you need, right? So you give it access. So this is where retrieval augmented generation is orders of magnitude better when you have to do factual generation, right? Nobody really talks about hallucinations in DALL-E or Midjourney or Stable Diffusion, even though the entire thing technically is what we define as a hallucination, right? But it's because we ask it to be creative. We don't set expectation of what the output should look like, so it's not a hallucination. But that it effectively is the same mechanism, right? And so if we talk about factual based generation, then you have to do grounding. If you ask an LLM to generate a poem, there's no hallucinations. It's a poem. It gets poetic license for everything.
And what's the general rule, I guess, Greg? Is it sort of the more general information, wide-ranging information the model's fed, the more it'll hallucinate potentially, where if you give it more depth of context in a specific area, it may be less? Or is that not a general rule? Because what I'm trying to get at is, as a user then, how do you get to a point where you can easily identify hallucinations? Because specifically if it's a topic or area that you're not familiar with and you're trying to figure out a little bit more about, do you then go to other sources rather than just going to a chat GPT as a starting point? What's kind of the rules or tips and tricks that we can share?
First of all, I'd say people should snip Alan's definition there, because it was pretty straight on, and one of the best definitions I've seen. It's better than reading 3 pages of this kind of stuff. The second element, to answer your question, I'd be like, well, you should always cross-reference. Always. So I'd be like, if you're wanting facts, go and look in an encyclopedia or a dictionary or something like that. And if you're using ChatGPT to do that, you're being lazy, but there's a cost to that laziness. And I'd be like, if you really want accuracy, go and look it up properly. It's exactly the same as, when you're doing university essays and you're using Wikipedia, and the university says you can't use it, so you scroll to the bottom of the page on Wikipedia and find the actual article, and you have to kind of give it a skim read, etc. The third thing, which I find really interesting in this, is the fact that AI is not human means that we use language that other humans would find offensive if we called it them. So, if you said something that disagreed with my worldview, and I just went, "You're a delusion. You are completely delusional. Shut up." You'd be like, "Wait a minute, that's pretty aggressive language." By definition, it's scientifically accurate, but it's not how we talk between each other. Yet, because it's not human, and it's just interesting, we treat it like it's not. It has no value. So you could say here, you treat it like it's some kind of mechanical slave. So you'd be like, "That's wrong. It's a delusion. This is junk." Kind of throw it away. I find that the most interesting thing, and I wonder when the average person will evolve from having this is not something with more flavorful language here, but perception of a soul, to this is now something with the perception of a soul and therefore has value, and therefore I will give it respect that I would give other humans or even animals like dogs or cats. Like, generally, people don't go like, "That dog's worthless, I'll just throw it away." You don't do that, and I just wonder if that's the direction here. But,
good people don't do that, right?
Yeah, good people. But I think we'll all agree that John Wick is very justified in what he went and did.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, this is the whole thing about, LLMs don't have emotions, and that guy got fired from Google for believing they did, right? Mm-hmm. Which, like, put it in context now, right? What he was seeing was like, the early version of Gemini. So think about it, something that talks like GPT-4, but nobody else really was working on it, and he was like, it just told me it's got feelings. What should I do, right? Sorry, I'm digressing a little bit because it's a fun thing to think about, right? If you're the only person that sees that in the world versus, everybody uses ChatGPT today. I want to double down on your point, Greg, which is, if it was human, what would you do? So we don't generally get something that someone else has done for us and not check it, right? So if you're, I'm going to move away from projects just for a second, just because there's a very, very good example of this in recent history. If you're a lawyer and you're writing a case, and someone else writes a section of your case with citations of other previous cases, if you're a good lawyer, you go and check it, right? Even if you trust your clerks completely, you still check it because it's your name on it, right? In fact, we had this conversation at the ASC AI Policy Committee about a month ago, I think, where there's still this notion of a responsible engineer, right? So if you're signing a design or a document or something for structural integrity, that means you've checked it. And there's no way of escaping that, right? So if you want your work to be good, just check it, right? Generative AI is giving people a lot of shortcuts to do things quickly. And in a sense, we complain about something that, a year ago was impossible. Just over a year ago was completely impossible, right? So there's one tweet that is etched into my brain, which is, so someone was complaining on Twitter about, ChatGPT's rubbish. It just keeps hallucinating. You can't use it for anything. And someone commented underneath, bro, we just taught Sand how to think. So in a sense, yeah, sure, hallucinations could be better, but a year and a half ago, you'd have to hire 50 interns to do the things that ChatGPT does.
No, yeah, you're right. You doubled down on Greg's point, because if you and I, or the three of us, disagree with each other, which we have done plenty times, you don't necessarily just go, you're useless. Or maybe you do, depending on how far you go.
No.
Let's say it about Val. He's not on the show. But you generally kind of. But there's usually some truth in what someone says, because I think we've said in previous episodes where, like large language models, where it's sort of, reducing information to give you something and making stuff up. Effectively, humans are similar in the fact that we've learned things from our ancestors that have learned things along the way, right? And so Greg's view of the world, Al, your view, my view, we have slightly different views. Is that necessarily wrong? You might call my view an hallucination, or I'm delusional, but
just look at American politics.
Yeah, exactly. Or any politics, any government in the world, right?
Any politics, any government. When it's not hard science, when it's not like, at what temperature does water boil at, and we can all have a provable truth in the center that we can all measure with generally the same objective view of reality, unless people have got cataracts or are hallucinating themselves. Yeah. But there's always some kind of, one man's delusion is another man's truth.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, the world is full of flat earthers, right?
Genuinely, someone I met said, "Oh, the Earth is flat," like 10 years ago, and I'm a physicist, and I was like, "Sorry, what?" I still haven't got my head round. Like, I'm sorry to just divert a second. Like, I'm an astrophysicist, so I'm like, oh my god. I was like, it's not the fact that someone's claimed the Earth is flat. That's not like the key thing for me. I'm like, cool, okay, right, well, we can test that. It's the fact that every theory that spawned from it for 300 years that has the maths that explain that at the absolute center would have to be rewritten. So I'm like, you'd have to rewrite engine management in Boeing planes, because the centripetal forces and the centrifugal forces that control blade spinning are also the equations that control like how gravity works. So you'd be like, well, if gravity's on one, I'd be like, I'm like, how do people not see knock-on effects? It bemuses me completely. I don't. Maybe they're hallucinating or delusional. I don't know.
Have you guys heard of Pastafarianism?
Yes.
Where the belief in the flying spaghetti monster.
Yeah, but that was invented as a joke, wasn't it? Then someone took it seriously, but
yeah, exactly. Which is great. Look, I think we could probably go on for ages talking about hallucinations. But to round it up, I think for me at least, the point we're trying to make here with hallucinations is that yes, it happens. It's not something that's just specific to AI or technology. Humans do it as well. And so just be sure that you have different points of information in which in sort of the area or topic you're trying to learn about or digest or explore. I think. I mean, I was chatting to my folks the other day back in South Africa, and my mother still has all the encyclopedias when I was in school and I did projects from them. She still got them. I said, keep them because those are going to be antiques, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, you're not going to throw them out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they might be wrong today, but that's
they fill up a bookcase nicely and make a nice background.
Exactly. I should get them shipped over.
Yeah.
But look, as we head to the end of the episode, what are our final thoughts on, I guess, both topics? Greg, let's go with you first.
My final thought is actually, I was remembering a book I read a while ago called Thinking Fast and Slow, and one of the things in there, it basically is one of the scientific studies was that even world experts don't apply their world expertise in all contexts. So, in this example, statistics professors at university were asked questions that were statistics questions, but they were asked them in ways that didn't sound like statistics, and they got them wrong, and they didn't use their knowledge to analyze them. What I would say here is, when you're thinking about projects and AI and all of this elements, try not to have the first worldview that comes to your mind. Just ask yourself a what-if question. So what if this wasn't AI? What if it was a person? How would I behave differently? And that will create a contrasting or a contrarian worldview that really allows you to see worlds in a very, very different way. So, for example, what if all of the cons that people were saying were irrelevant? What would cause something to be inevitable, etc.? And that, I think, would be the most interesting thing for me to take away from this, because as you go into your workplace, you will start to see things in very, very different ways, and you'll start to be able to reach conclusions that other people can't reach.
Yeah, I think you're right. The world changes when you change, I think is true. Al, how about your final thoughts?
So maybe I'm going to carry on the thought, right? So all these things that everybody complains about for the performance of generative models, they're all temporary.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Hallucinations are a temporary problem. They're not a characteristic of, they are how the models are designed, but even so, it's still all temporary. So if you think about how quickly we went from nothing to GPT-3 to GPT-4 to now open source models that outperform GPT-4 on a lot of things, the speed at which things are gonna improve is gonna be faster than the speed at which we can find problems with it, right? So and think of this, right? If your job is to create a document, all of a sudden your actual job has gone from I have to write the document to just I have to read it. Think about how much of an improvement that is already, and think of what's going to happen in the next 2 years and how different is that going to be?
Yeah, it's crazy to think about the rate of change is going to accelerate. It's almost like that curve, that economic curve that Greg was talking about, but we won't go into that because we'll be here for days and hours talking about it, I think. But look, folks, it's awesome to be able to share our thoughts and views with you. If you want to get in touch with us, please do. There's LinkedIn. Please do subscribe, follow LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, whichever podcast player you're using. But remember, this is designed to share perspective, and I hope you're getting that from what we're saying. If not, tell us that as well. We'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. If you disagree with us, especially as well, please do send that in. But really, please do also help us share and post these links on your social medias and send them on your WhatsApp groups if you've enjoyed something that we've said. But thanks, Al. Thanks, Greg. We'll go looking for Val for the next episode. We'll see everyone in 2 weeks' time.
Maybe Val was a hallucination.
I think we're going to have to use generative AI to create Val. But there we go.
Synthesia's pretty good nowadays, so.
Exactly. We'll get his likeness. But there we go. Right, folks. Thank you very much, and bye for now.